Today, I would love for us to discuss the direction we've been going in. We've been having a lot of conversations on the side, exploring a lot of different media, and I would love to see where you guys are going, what you are exploring, and what is leading you down that path. Who would like to start us off?
Well, I'll jump in here. I was the last holdout between all the three of us to do anything other than watercoloring. And I think I made it 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's been 7 years that at least we've all three been involved with each other, and that's a very long time. But I never strayed. I just stuck with the Ron Ranson palette, the Ron Ranson method, and that going into watercolor, that was my first dive into doing any art whatsoever since school, right? Since high school art class. And I always just avoided going, like straying, because I felt like there's so much I needed to try to accomplish doing the watercolors. And I hit a pretty big lull. I would say all of 2022, I just had a hard time jumping back into what I was doing, and I wasn't as enthusiastic. It doesn't mean that I did paint, but it wasn't like I had used to paint, where every day I'd get behind, my easel and paint stuff. So coming into 2023, I can't remember exactly why, but I decided I was going to go ahead. I was watching YouTube, playing around and having fun, and I thought, you know what, it's time for me to try something. So I'm all in on the acrylic thing now. I still haven't really tried the oil stuff out, but as far as the acrylics go, I've renewed my enthusiasm and I'm back on it, and I'm just having fun with the acrylics in the same way that I was doing when I first got going in watercolor. And that's kind of where I am.
Okay, so you are currently delving into acrylic after 7 years of straight watercolor. Joe is diving into something else. Actually, I think Joe has dived into two different mediums. What have you been looking at, Joe?
So I've always kind of fooled around with the acrylic, but for me, the thing that always seems to be the hook for me is the technique. I'm kind of drawn in by how something is created. That is the lure to kind of get me in to something. For example, like when I saw, let's just say, like a Bob Ross type thing, and people see that TV, how it's created and it's unfolded, and there's wow in 30 minutes, and look at how that's done, and it's the magic of how that pulls you in. It's the same way with Ron Ranson with the hake. It's like, here's a guy with a big brush. He has this easy, approachable technique, and you want to create too, as we're all creative minded. You see that, and the idea is I can do that too. So it's like it looks easy enough for you, and then you get into it. And I thought, well, I'm going to eat, sleep, drink this hake brush, and I'm gonna, like we used to play hockey when we were younger. It's like, hey, you take your stick everywhere with you. You sleep with it in your bed. That's how good you're going to get with this. It's going to be like your third appendage, whatever you want to call it, but. And then you that's how good you'd be with it. So that's what I did. I did nothing really but that. But I've always looked for, in watching YouTube videos and things like that, I see different techniques and people doing different things. And I've seen a few different things like knife painting and painting with just the palette knife. Each tool has a way of causing you to paint in such a way, like The Ron Ranson brush is good for painting in a way that it causes you that you cannot really go into detail. So it eliminates the fuss. So it causes you to take an impressionist approach. The palette knife is the same way, and you can use that in acrylic or oil. And just the application of the way the paint is and the way you have to work it for me, that's the draw. So I've been doing really more like knife type paintings lately in both oil and acrylic, more of the acrylic than the oil, but that's really what I'm jazzed about right now. Although I'm still doing the watercolor, I won't stop doing that. And on my channel, I have videos, you know, on a regular basis. I don't want to lose that because you really need the practice. And you know, if you're doing any medium, you should keep doing it daily, 2, 3 times a week. But I'm really into this knife painting thing, and that's where I'm at now.
All right, so let me ask you this, and then I want to jump to Matthew with a question based off of something you had said. But real quick, so Matthew had said that he was feeling a lull for 2022. And I think that we've all had that. We've kind of had our ups and downs where we either have the muse or the not. Did you have any sort of lull taking place with your art before you move to acrylic and the knife painting?
Who, Joe?
And that's for you, Joe. Yeah, that's for Joe. Did you have any sort of lull, or did you had said the need for creation? So did you kind of just
No
you were still
lull. No, there was no lull. There was no like I need something else or anything like that. That didn't happen. More so than anything, like I'm always just trying to like pull more out of the painting. I guess that's another thing. Like watercolor is great, but it's subtle. It's a subtle medium. It's not really so much about super bright, super vivid colors. So I was kind of like, okay, I like the idea of doing some things that are very colorful and the intensity. So I was kind of incorporating acrylics a little bit into the watercolor and doing sort of mixed media. And then when I started kind of fooling around with doing the knife and things like that, I thought that really grabbed me. So there was no lull. My painting enthusiasm hasn't changed in all the years of doing it. I've never had anything where I was like, well, I'm kind of like in this. I mean, I've had where I got in a little funk. I didn't feel like my paintings were like where I wanted them to be, but I've never really been in like a lull where I was like, oh, I don't feel like painting anymore. I have never really gotten to that point, which is in a hobby perspective, it's probably the longest that I've been that excited about something ongoing and constantly challenged by it.
okay. So there was the drive, the creation drive, the challenge. Also, I think what was really interesting was you saying the knife painting and how you see that carryover and the use from different mediums. You also talked about the benefit of acrylic, and we'll talk about acrylic in a bit if that's fine. But to go to Matthew real quick, you had said you had the lull. You had said you had the 7 years, but I don't recall you saying what sparked the acrylic. Or
I'll tell you
like did that.
why the acrylic. One, I went into the acrylic because I wanted something that you could come easy into and be finished in a reasonable time frame. And I know the oils have a kind of a drying time burden that you have to deal with. And when I really dive into something, when I get going on something, just like when I started the watercolors, I need to be able to produce an ample amount of that. And there's no way that the amount of things that when I'm into it, the amount of paintings that I turn out, there's no way I could have 20 oil paintings drying for the next 4 weeks, whatever it takes. And so that's why I said, okay, I'm going to do the acrylic because, you know, with the acrylic, you do a painting and it's dry and marketable within an hour or two. And the other thing that the reason why I really liked it is because I was going to be able to use my same, this is practical stuff. I was going to be able to use my same water pot my same palettes, my same stuff with the acrylics that I have already, I already have a rhythm. I already have a way that I manage myself in my studio space. So it's not, I didn't have to like totally, change all of my materials and equipment to go into another water media like acrylic. Whereas with oils, I'd have to move some stuff around, and that's why I went right into acrylic.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to weave a little bit of a thread and try not to really put words in y'all's mouth. But one thing that I'm seeing between what both y'all said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Joe had saw with acrylics the ability to create and said to himself he can do that. And with you, Matthew, it sounds like the ability to create, put out acrylic works and have that finished and not have to sit and wait on oils, where you're not the instant gratification, but you're able to see your results quicker. Is that
see my results quicker, but more of a practical matter. While I'm getting really, proficient in the media, I don't want to have a bunch of stuff sitting around drying.
okay?
Whereas because I produce a lot. When I get enthusiastic, it's nothing for me in one evening to do 5 finished paintings. And if 5 finished paintings have to dry for 2 weeks, that's and the other thing that I did with acrylic is I just painted over the same, almost like the old those things that the etch and sketch or whatever, the magnadoodle. Like a magnadoodle, I would just paint over my acrylic that I did the day before, or even like a couple hours before. I just wipe it all out, cover it up with white, and then go at it again and again and again. I don't think I'd be able to do that with the oils. I think you could, but it wouldn't be so instantaneous. And really, what I was trying to do as I'm getting into the acrylic is get proficient with it. And I know from my watercolor experience that to get proficient with it, you have to have that freedom and liberty to where you can just play with the paints, play with the colors, and kick stuff out fast.
Yeah, I can definitely see that and definitely agree with that. For me, with oils, whenever I use them, I have to build little things to hold them and to separate them. And I transitioned from canvas to panel. We've talked about this because the panel, 1/8 size, takes up a lot less space than canvas, which is usually, I think, 3/4 is kind of the traditional thickness starting point. But so talking about the acrylic now, and you had mentioned, and Joe did as well. So I think let's bring this back to Joe. I think it'd be good to transition to how you guys are delving into acrylic and what materials you're using. Because both of you guys talked about carryover, and I think people listening would want to know about that. Because the main starting with getting into a new medium might be materials, money, etc. And this might help people out there make that transition. So,
Yeah.
So Joe, I'm curious what you're using, and I would love to hear you and Matthew talk back and forth about what materials you've tried, what you want to try, and what you suggest. So,
Well, I've used paper, canvas panel, and wood board. So I've used all of those for both the oil and the acrylic. And I will say, and I know Matthew knows this already, but you can add dryer. And I feel probably like he does that. Because in watercolor, we didn't have to really add anything. I know you could put granulation medium, things like that. You don't have to add dryers or thinners or any of that stuff, except for just water. And so if you're going to use, I feel I don't want to add things. So I know where he's coming from on the oil. You can add drying chemical, that alkyd or liquid or whatever. You can add that to your paint so it will dry faster. But like for me, I would be like, man, I don't really want to add things. I think I want things convenient. So they're like basically straight out of the tube, and the transition from the watercolor to the acrylic, you're still using water. You're still using nearly the same brushes, and you're nearly using, you can use paper. So there's that too. Although in oil, they have certain oil paper, but so it's easy to make the transition, like you're saying. I mean, I just went into the same stores and I bought, Liquitex is one of the brands that I bought because you could buy like a big set. I didn't know what colors I wanted to use. And then I would buy like canvas panel. You get like a 5-pack, and it's already gessoed and primed and stuff like that. So I mean, I could pretty much sit down and do it. But I also was doing this in the sketchbooks. If you remember, I have the sketchbook watercolor, and I was doing acrylics in the sketchbook. That's kind of like where I started, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like this, but the colors are different, the mixing is different. But once I started doing it in the sketchbooks and I get a little bit more comfortable with the dry time, then I was like, well, let me try this in this, on this format. So I would do it on a canvas, and I was doing the knives and putting a lot of paint on, and I kind of started going into this. I really went into a different direction style wise, but it was fun. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to. And I stress to people who want to learn, it's like, don't, how you do it. If you're doing something that's tedious, you're going to quit doing it. If you do something that you have fun doing, as long as the results are halfway decent, you're going to keep on doing it and stick with it.
You have to, anything that's like inconvenient or in your way, that's a potential, that's something that could knock you off of your enthusiasm. So you always want to try to figure out what those things are and eliminate those things. Keep it easy, keep it fun, keep it cheap, also cheap.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, so keeping it cheap and keeping it fun and easy. For you, Matthew, paper, canvas, or wood, what have you used so far? What would you use?
Well,
Keeping
I'd say use whatever you have. The first thing that I did is I started treating some of my failed watercolors, some of my, just the stuff that sits around in the bin or whatever, pulling those out and doing acrylics over those. That's where I started. So I didn't have to buy anything right away as far as support goes. I actually followed Dave Usher's gesso recipe and did some texturing onto existing watercolor paper that I had, and I'm still doing that texturing with PVA glue and plaster of Paris. And so once I ran through the paper for a little bit, I bought some canvas panel, using canvas panels and also stretch canvas, but you can pretty much go on anything you want with the acrylic, which is another reason why I'm kind of excited about acrylics for a lot of reasons. One of them being you can paint on any support.
Yeah. I do want to say, taking old watercolors and, we talk about painting on the back of them. You mentioned David Usher, who gessos over it. I tried that with oils. I want to say about 5 years ago, gessoed and oiled on top of it. But I wanted to point out, you guys probably had this feeling, and I had this feeling, where you get to the point you have so many watercolors. When you finally turn them over and start working on the back, or you finally start putting a little mat over it and framing it to the size that you like and cutting it up.
Yeah.
Going back all those things. So when you hit that point, it's something. It's a feeling, all right.
It's something.
Can I make a comment on cost? You mentioned cost.
Yeah.
And when you look at these two things, I mean, these are like the same price. I know you add water to watercolor, but it's like when you think about getting more paint for your buck, and you look at these two tubes, doing watercolor is expensive. So I mean, you can get a lot more in this big tube, and that is an attractive feature all by itself.
I have indeed noticed that going into acrylics, that I mean, you just get so much more material to work with, and you can, I mean, theoretically, you could paint in the watercolor style with the acrylic using about the same amount of paint that you do in watercolor techniques. So I mean, it's exponential how much more bang for your buck you get on the acrylic stuff.
I can get acrylic paint in a jar. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the price of acrylics, the price of watercolors has just skyrocketed. But yeah, acrylics have always been just very readily accessible. But so talking with the watercolor and the transition to acrylics, what brushes are you guys using, and what did you find can carry over, either to be cost effective or just like Joe had said earlier, he found a carryover with palette knives. So what carryovers are you all seeing?
Well, I use the big brushes just like I did in the Ron Ranson method. It's just I'll use a bristle, you know, a flat bristle brush, 1.5 inch flat, a big filbert. I'm loving the filberts. That's what I really like painting with, the filberts and the acrylic. So I use a big, you know, whatever number it is, 20 filbert.
Oh, that's a big, yeah. In
That's
college,
Yeah.
I would use a filberts, probably like a number 6 to paint like Van Gogh with oils, where I would do the very thick Van Gogh brush.
Yeah.
So filbert is becoming your brush of choice?
The filberts are definitely, filberts are my brush of choice on the acrylic. And then I was inspired by Joe to do the palette knife stuff. And so like, this is all filbert except for all what I did in here with the palette knife on this.
Yeah, that's cool.
On this painting here. But you know, but I mean, and that looks like that's definitely my watercolor looking style. I mean, it's definitely me. Definitely.
Yeah, it's still you.
Yeah.
So it's just a change. It's just getting used to a different material that you're painting with.
So let's keep those acrylics on hand for a moment. Let's first talk about the colors that you're using, and let's relate it to the Ron Ranson palette. And I'm curious where you guys stayed within it and where you deviated. And then after that, I would love to see examples of the acrylics that you guys have done, and if you can talk about the application and how it differed. So we'll talk about the colors that you guys are using. I'll give you all each a chance, and then we'll talk about. I want you guys to show some paintings. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Good flow.
Yeah.
Well, my palette, I'm still using something very similar to the Ron Ranson palette. I'm using ultramarine blue. I'm using lemon yellow in the System 3 acrylics, the De La Roni. So I'm using ultramarine blue, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, not raw sienna. I'm using yellow ochre, burnt umber, burnt sienna, Payne's gray, and then I'm occasionally dipping into a green, occasionally, something like a sap green, and the titanium white, and the crimson, permanent crimson hue. And that's my palette. That's the same thing as the Ron Ranson scheme. And that's where I'm settling in. I'm going to do what I know, so I'm going to stick with those. Joe?
Now, out of the three of us, Joe has always had the most vibrant paintings. So I'm curious what Joe has settled on, or I'm sure he's still exploring, because I think he's going to have some interesting colors.
I don't usually settle. I mean, here's
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I use a whole bunch of different colors because I'm just trying to like get like something, a lot of vibrancy and kind of a lot of energy. And so like it's not foreign for me to use 3 blues in the sky, especially with the knife and kind of blending those 3 or 4 blues and then 3 or 4 yellows. I just like the solid colors. It needs something to like some kind of blending. So, but I mean, I still am a little true to those colors I learned from doing Ron Ranson, like the yellow ochre and the raw sienna. I got some raw sienna, and I mean, that really, you need to have that. I mean, there's certain colors it's like, yeah, you need to have those. Like the burnt umber is a must. And but now we get to play with white and we get to play with black, no problem. I mean, we can incorporate those in. If we want to go darker, we can put black in there. Don't have to, but you can do it, you know. And like certain colors, like all the earthy colors, you got to have the certain yellows and the burnt sienna, and you know those same ones we used before. Maybe you can alizarin, okay. You don't need the light red like with the Ron Ranson, but all those things that we picked up from those 7 or 8 original colors, definitely those colors you do want to have those, you know, and then some. It depends on what you're doing. Like I'm doing urban scenes. I was doing a beach scene, and I like colors of convenience. I like to be able to go into this thing and go, oh, I need like this, see, this blue is kind of an odd blue, but this makes like a certain, you know, for like an ocean or a beach scene or something. It's like, I have this, I don't have to make it. So I like to have the colors there.
Yeah.
It's probably within the student grades that we have bought for watercolor. They're usually narrower. That's a word that I have trouble narrower with the color availability. And if you go to the professional grade within watercolor, it opens up a big world. Are you guys finding more colors accessible, is what you're saying, for an affordable price with acrylic?
There's a lot of colors
I-
out there.
But like more affordable, where you're not spending as a, like we would do a $5 tube of ultramarine, let's say, and then we'd have to do a $30 tube of cad red, orange, green, you know what I mean? Within acrylics, are you finding that same price range and accessibility? Is that making sense?
I
I
play
haven't
around
shopped
still
for
in
like,
the student ranges is where I'm using that System 3 from De La Roni or the Galleria from Windsor and Newton, and I also have been using, what else have been using? Well, that's about it. I think those are what I'm using, and they're totally affordable. I mean, completely affordable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Joe had said something, and then after this, I would love for you guys to show some examples and show how it was similar to and different from watercolor. But a question that hit me was Joe had said he would use, like, let's say 3 colors in the sky. So he would not get that flat plane of color. That immediately made me think of gouache. When I paint with gouache, if I'm going to use a raw sienna, I get a flat block of raw sienna. Are you finding that same application with acrylic, and that's what you're trying to break up?
yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done gouache too. You've seen me do gouache. And yeah, I mean, if you do a flat color, it's just kind of like nail polish. I mean, that's the thing about acrylic, is it's kind of that sort of nail polishy thing, and all the colors are like bright, and some of them, I mean, dare I say, garish, like some of the greens and yellows. And when you look at a painting, you automatically know it's acrylic. And if you're trying to do a nature scene and make it look like realistic, that's where the difficulty comes in. When you mix acrylic colors, you have to mix them pretty well. See, when you do watercolor, you can just kind of dab into the different colors and just let that happen and let that blend on the paper. But with acrylic, if you want to make a certain color, you have to be a little bit more deliberate about mixing exactly the color you want. And I don't feel like, and I probably shouldn't speak too soon, because somewhere out there's probably a lot of colors, but I feel like there's a lot of those colors you're talking about that are customized colors you can find, especially like the Daniel Smith. You can find certain really cool colors, like cool greens, different shades. And I don't use them because exactly why you said the availability. I don't want to turn around and not have something available, but I might use it as a specialty thing. That's why I stick with the tried and true colors that have been around for years and years. But I don't see those. Like I was trying to find, remember when I was trying to find that dark purple? I was trying to find something that matched the indigo that I had found in the watercolor. I still haven't really found it. So like I still have to kind of make, if I want that dark purpley color, like that exactly what I had before, I haven't found it. So I gotta say, I'm not finding the convenience colors, and it requires a little more mixing in acrylic than watercolor did. Watercolor, you get in there, you could slap it on the paper, let it kind of blend in and let the granulation happen and all that stuff. In some ways it did the work for you, but in acrylic, I say this in a tongue-in-cheek way, but like you have to actually paint.
Yeah,
You have to actually,
you've got to actually work the paint, which in watercolor you get to put it on and let it bloom and move around, and people see it and go, wow, how did you do that? Well, you put it on the paper and let it run into a puddle of water and it does that. But the
yeah.
acrylic, you're right, you have to really get the brush out, and if you want it to be on there, you've got to do it. You're
It it's funny how we're all in the genre of fast and loose painters, and we're finding watercolor, which is traditionally referred to as a harder medium in some books.
it's definitely harder.
But it's funny that we're like watercolor, it paints itself, and then acrylics, you're having to take that different mixture approach to it. Is there anything more you would like to say on color, or would you guys like to start showing some of your works that you've done in this new medium you've been exploring, and kind of show us the comparisons, contrasts? Anything else we need to say about color?
I don't think so. Color is,
All right.
we talked about color once before. I'm always going to want to mix colors up. I actually like mixing and looking at and trying to get colors from mixing them. But you can use any color you want. It's more about value and tone, wouldn't you say? For sure.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Me, I'm all about the texture and the tone and muted. So Joe, do you have a painting on hand that you would like to
I don't really have much within, like, I guess, reach. I mean, there is this one on the wall. I don't know if you could see it. That one is one I went crazy with the knife. Hold on, let me grab it.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, we would
No,
love
that's
to
fine.
see
I'll
work.
show you a couple. I don't have that many within reach. A lot of them are hanging on my wall. My family wanted to keep them. They liked them
By
so
the
much
way,
because they like the color. See, like this is
one
totally done
second,
with the
Joe.
knife.
By the way, one second. So Joe, he has a eBay, right? You list your paintings?
I do. I have been very lackadaisical. If you go to my website, my joemenza.com website, you could link to all social media and all my shops and everything. But I have not been on top of like listing new paintings. I'm more about perfecting what I'm doing and getting that better and better. And, then maybe I'll do more listing in the future. But for right now, I'm not. I'm more into doing the videos, inspiring other people to pick up the brush and do my thing. And I haven't really been on top of it. I put a few things out there, but I don't know.
You're very humble, and I'm plugging you right now because your work that you've been sharing has been fantastic. In fact, this one that you're about to show us, I remember us seeing it in the past, and I'm excited that everybody else is going to get to see this one. And I would recommend to everybody to check out Joe Menza's website, and to pick up a work of art from Joe Menza, because yeah, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I
Big name.
appreciate that. So this one here is just one that I did, and I was exploring that color palette, and even though these are kind of close, and there's like different tones and things like that. It's all kind of in that same family of range, but yet with the mountains and trees and stuff and water that I like to paint. And again, this was mostly done with a knife and, just kind of working that. And then I'll go to the next one real quick. So Matthew has some time, but I just did this one on a wood. You can see this is the wood panel. This one here is like a marina. And I was fooling with the idea of trying to just do shapes and have it kind of look. You got to look at these from a distance, obviously. They look better in person. And then I'll show you this other one, which I have to be careful with, the drying time.
But the one, the Marina one, I can tell you right now, I've seen stuff like that in galleries. I think
this
something like that is fantastic. The movement, the color. That's
really what I'm trying to get, like movement and color. And then I like throwing a lot of information at the viewers so that like there's a lot of things to see. And so there's that energy. So when you hit it, you're kind of go back a little and go, okay, what am I looking at? Okay, I get it now, that kind of thing. Now, this one here was oil. This is on a small canvas panel, but I have to be careful because it's still not dry after a couple of weeks. But this is kind of like a highway scene where cars are going, wherever. And I did this. This is with just regular oils, no additives. And this was done with a knife also.
It's weird. Like I can definitely tell the difference between the two. What do you think, Matthew?
Difference
between the oil and
oil and the acrylic? I can't really, but I never would be able to have a painting drying for that long without getting frustrated at it. And having cats, I have cats here, so I have cat hair showing up in all my art all the time. So
if I continue to do oils, I'm going to have to buy something to mix into them to get the dry time down. I cannot have that taking that long. It just, I forgot that took that long.
Yeah.
When I went back to doing it, because I had done it before, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how long this takes. And if I'm using a palette knife, it's going to take forever. And I don't want to be like, okay, 6 months has gone by. I can varnish this now.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, these I wait like a week and then I'll spray the Kamal varnish. Kamal varnish. I'll spray that over and do a couple of coats and it's ready for its frame within a few hours.
That's great.
See, I can see the variation in the sky in that one versus your oil. You didn't vary your sky as much. Did you have a limited palette with the oil?
I didn't do it with the oil because I started off with kind of a pink thing and then I just wanted to put a little more energy in there. So I just it wasn't really my main focal point.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on those or show us before we look at Matthew's? Or Matthew, is there anything you want to comment on his before we look at yours?
No, great work. It's exciting.
Take a look at his. I have another one I want to show you, but I have to grab it. So I'll let Matthew go ahead and then maybe we could just do one more. You were talking about the sky and I can show you a better example on this other painting that I have. So go ahead, Matthew.
Well, I brought in a couple of things just now, but like this is on paper. This is acrylic on paper. This is over an old watercolor. So I just taped it out and I textured over it with plaster of Paris. And this is done, this thing was done directly over watercolor, which is also on the back of an old watercolor. So this is see that?
I gotta say, I at first when I had saw Joe's, I was like, oh, okay, I can tell the difference between the acrylic and the oil. And then I look at this one that Matthew's showing us, and I think oil. And I'm not sure if it's the palette approach or what, but Matthew, it's absolutely fantastic.
You like this one?
So, oh yeah, it's beautiful.
This is just purely done. This was purely done on a watercolor that I just went back in. I mean, the composition and everything, and put it in. That's paper. That I have a bunch of them that I brought in on paper, and again, old watercolor and acrylics on paper. So this was, you know, experimental time. This was messing around, playing with paint. I think I painted over this thing a couple of times before I pulled the tape off of it. But
Can you sorry, can you pull that in close so we could see the foreground? Raise it up a little bit.
there you go.
See,
There's the foreground.
you and Joe and your textures.
Okay.
You and Joe and your textures.
Well, I will say on the textures, the texturing is something that I do an underpainting with that plaster stuff. And I've been
That's what
telling
I
you
was
about.
going to ask.
Well,
I was going
here's-
to ask if you put the Mod Podge on
Yeah,
there.
so this is like the Mod Podge mixed with the plaster of Paris, and I actually texture out an underpainting. I've got texture here for my foreground. I've got horizontal texture here for a distant field, and I've got clouds and distant trees already textured on this support. And this is something that I've been doing. Been getting cool results from it.
Now, there, for people that are watching, there's some different texture mediums. However, Joe and I think Matthew went into more detail with it, more experimentation. He's been mixing Mod Podge, and what have you been mixing it with? He's been
Plaster of Paris. Yeah, Mod Podge with plaster of Paris, and then I paint it on and actually texture out my composition.
Yeah, and I think Joe did explore that. Do you want to add anything about that exploration, Joe, before we
Yeah,
continue?
I mean, here's a panel that I did. I don't know if you can see it, but I did exactly what Matthew did based on what he did, and it's got that texture to it, the same kind of thing. And real quick, so I'm not stealing too much thunder, I could put these back. This is what I was talking about. This is the beach scene, and you can see those knife strokes and how I've put in different colors in the sky. And these just a few strokes of the knife, and you're kind of done if you like that fast and loose. And then of course you pop in the little details of the knife. I did two like that because they were supposed to go together. See, and then there's this one. It's the complementary piece of it, and I used basically the same colors. And you see how I use those convenience colors in the water, like a turquoise and a green.
Yeah, if you could hold that up for a second, if you could hold the water up, just for our viewers, you can see about 3 different and white plus a carryover from the land into his water. And then if you show the sky,
Joe, you have to speak for Joe. You have to speak for your picture to come.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, here's the water, and then here's the sky you were asking about. So if you could see that back, yeah, here it is. I forgot
Yeah.
I had to speak to get the camera to move to me, but I hope this is helping you here.
Yeah, that's
Here
awesome.
I am doing a critique of it, and it's pulling me away. But you can see what Joe was talking about earlier. And if you recall, in Matthew's second painting, he has almost a flat blue in the sky. So you can see the difference in variation between their two approaches right off the bat. I mean,
this flat blue, is that the one you're talking about?
yep.
Yeah. But the other thing I have, I've been doing these impressionistic scenes. I've just been doing the same composition over and over again, and trying to get kind of, you know, you get the idea of what I'm trying to do there. But
Yeah.
This is on those canvas panels. But again, I textured these things. They're textured.
I think you would benefit from, not benefit, but like you would enjoy looking at Thomas Gurdon. He was a contemporary of JMW Turner, and he passed away in his 20s. And Turner had said if he didn't pass away, he would have had Turner's job essentially. And that one is very reminiscent of a Thomas Gurdon. He did the yeah, what's called the White House at Chelsea. Earlier in the year, last year this time, I was doing some studies of him. So at a later date, I'll tell you the name again, but I would, very reminiscent of him. sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder, but
Yeah, well,
they're
that's what I've got to show. I mean, I've got a couple of other ones, but they don't really need to be shown. I mean, I'm just playing with stuff. I'm just kicking things out, playing, trying to do different, trying to do some Southwest scenery, some New
That's
Mexico
nice.
stuff,
yeah.
doing some sort of fantastic forest scenes, things like this, and just playing. Really, I'm just trying to get better at what I'm doing, and get my colors right. This is on paper again, old watercolors. But
I'm just surprised at how much it looks like your watercolor. Like it's still the same style. Like if you held it up, I'm like, oh, this is Matthew Clemons, same style. Like my stuff doesn't look like my watercolor stuff. It looks completely different. But yours, like you still made that transition, and it looks similar, which is actually pretty cool in and of itself that you were able to make that leap. And I know you've held out on a long time doing it, so it's cool. I'm excited that you're doing it as well at the same time.
yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I held out for a long time, and after getting started, and now I can put what I want to put down on the canvas and stuff. I'm actually pleased too to see that my style has come through. That
Yeah.
it still looks very much like where I got in watercolor, and it doesn't look totally, you're like, oh, that doesn't even look close to what I was doing in watercolor. So I'm pleased about that. Actually, I like that consistency. It shows that I can put down what I'm thinking I want to put down, and have it not come out like crap. I mean, it looks decent. So I'm pleased with it.
So both of you guys have beautiful works of art, and for me, just trying to categorize things, I look at Joe Menza's and his exploration of the color and the texture and application, and I think of the Fauvist, and I've mentioned that before to Joe, and I just absolutely love that. And I look at Matthews, and for me, I know me and him have explored tonalists in the past, and I think I almost see like Hudson River Valley School, the more 1800s, might be the palette and the way the palette comes through for you.
Might be the
But
palette, but I think it might be also because I spend so much of my time outside looking at this stuff. So,
yeah,
my paintings tend to change with the seasons because I'm always painting the things I see. Being outside all the time, my office is out in the woods. And so I have in my mind what I see. So my stuff that I paint it looks like North Texas. And that's what I think that's what you're seeing.
yeah, no, it's absolutely, both y'all's absolutely gorgeous. I think we covered the lead up into you guys making these transitions or these explorations. I mean, I know that Joe is still staying in watercolor, still exploring that and exploring oils. Joe, do you want to talk about any direction you're leading in, and then maybe wrap us up? And Matthew, if he wants to add any direction he's leading in, wrap us up.
I think I have like the kid in the candy store syndrome, and I was the kid in the candy store, so it kind of fits together. Like I'll run over and I'll get, hey, give me 2 of these and 3 of these and blah 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 blah, and like I'm still doing that. Like, hey, what if I try this or what if I try that? Like I haven't gotten into, and I think like when you go to work, if you're working a regular job, you figure out, okay, I drive here at this time. When I go to work, I turn this on, I do this and I do that. And you have this set of variables. There's like no creative role in a lot of jobs. But like when it comes to your painting, it's like you could do that. I suppose you could go, okay, these 6 colors work for me. I'm going to use canvas, these 2 brushes, and that's all I'm ever going to use. And that's great. But like I look at it and I'm like, hey, I want to try that. I want to try that. I want to try that. Hey, I just saw somebody using like chore boy, you know, that stuff you use for cleaning pans. I see somebody dipping that in paint and making some weird texture. It's like, oh, I gotta buy that. And I'll run out and I'll buy, like, you know, that scouring thing for the pan. I'm like, let me see what that does. And, you know, I'll dip it in the clouds. So I mean, will I ever stay on a thing where they go, oh, this is the same person painting? I don't know if that, I guess it's good to some degree. If somebody really likes your style, I think my style has changed, like from when I first started the watercolor. My stuff doesn't look the same. And I had a lot of people buying my stuff earlier on, and it might be that syndrome where somebody says, I liked his earlier stuff, you know, or I like his later stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know, but that's just kind of how I feel. But I'm always into, hey, if you're having fun doing it, I mean, that's like the most important thing, because it's meant to take your mind off of things, and it opens up that creative thing. So that's me. I guess that is, it's supposed to be you on the surface, right? It's supposed to be you know, you being on paper or on canvas, whatever. And if that's who I am, that's who I am on each piece as it evolves. You know, I think that it really represents you, and maybe my evolution does represent me. So and I say follow that. If that's who you are, be who you are. You know, a lot of people I notice in the group, you see a lot of people that say, this is after this artist, this is after this artist. But over some time, you really need to, like, you know, it should be after you. You should be having fun, and the creative juices should be showing more and more of you as you go along. And again, have fun with it. Doesn't matter what tool you use, if that tool's fun. If you're using like a little one-haired brush and you feel all stressed out, don't use it. Do what's fun.
Yeah,
You know,
don't use it.
that's, some people like those little details. It's not for me. I like fast and loose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I gotta say, you know, you say the kid in the candy store, I have the same symptom, you know, I'm the same syndrome. And your excitement always shows through. And whenever we have our conversations and all that, you know, it's always, you can always tell when Joe is excited. And you know, like, I know you've been excited a lot lately with this medium, which has been fantastic. And I absolutely love that for you. And you can tell when he's contemplative and approaching different things. So it's, I can tell how it comes out of you. And that's really exciting to see.
Yeah.
So Matthew, we'll have you wrap us up and see if there's any direction you're going in. I don't know if Matthew has anything ever available online. And if we could start twisting his arm or his leg to start making things available for people.
Yeah, I'm gonna
But
do that. I mean, part of the reason that I've moved, you know, trying to move forward and get enthusiastic again is because I've got so much material that I need to list and that I should make available. So, you know, that's part of what pushed me into jumping into acrylic, was just to, you know, to keep moving forward. I'm not leaving watercolor. I'm not at all leaving it behind. It's still, I absolutely love watercolor. Yeah, love it. What watercolor has taught me, I think the lessons learned from watercolor is going to make me a better painter. I think if you spend a lot of time with watercolors and you get enthusiastic about watercolors, you learn to be a better painter. You also, if you get good at watercolors, that means that you've learned how to play with paint. That means you've learned how to experiment and see what's going to happen, because watercolor is all about what's going to happen when you put it out there. And that skill right there, the ability to just play around and let things go, is invaluable. You know, to have learned that as part of the process with watercolor, and then to come into another media, I mean, that's invaluable to be able to have that playful approach to, I'm going to see what's going to happen with this color, with this paint, with these textures. That comes from playing around with watercolors for so long. So I won't leave watercolors. I am really focusing on what I'm painting right now with the acrylics, but the watercolor definitely is not going to go away, for sure.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And I'm really excited for both of y'all. I mean, the works that you guys showed is fantastic. Like I said, you know, you guys are just absolutely amazing me with what you're producing with acrylic. And yeah, on that note, hopefully we plan on doing more of these videos. I think this is our fourth one. You know, down below, we'll have some links for everybody if you want to check stuff out. And let us know if there's anything you guys want to hear us talk about in particular. Because there's tons of stuff we can talk about. I could talk all day. On that note, any last words?
And that's it for me. I look forward to the next talk and see y'all in the Ron Ranson page for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good. And thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I hope you all have a great evening, and I will talk to you all soon. You all stay safe, and we need a catchphrase. Somebody say something, and then we'll sign off.
Keep on painting.
Keep on painting. We'll be back later.
There you go.
Keep on creating.
Keep on creating.
All right.
All right.
Okay, I just stopped the recording.
What do you all
Okay.
think? That was fun.